Hello, my name is David Nachman, and I'm one of the managing attorneys at the Nachman Fulwani Zimochek Law Group with offices in Ridgewood, New Jersey. We also have an office in Midtown Manhattan on right off of Fifth Avenue on 36th Street. And we have affiliated offices in Canada and in Mumbai, India. And today I'd like to spend a little time telling you about the basics of the Perm labor certification application process, because that's a question that we get from many of our clients who don't really understand step by step how to go about doing a Perm process in order to get the green card, and this is through the employment-based sponsorship process. So basically what the Perm process is about, it's an online filing process. It's done through a portal called iCERT, which is through the U.S. Department of Labor. The U.S. Department of Labor administers the labor certification process. The reason why is because the labor certification process has to do with protecting the U.S. job market. So what the Department of Labor has done is created this Perm process, and in this process it's a several-step, multi-tiered process. And the way that we try to make it easy for our clients is to explain it to them using what's called the baseball analogy. Now, most of our clients probably would be able to glean more from a soccer analogy, but unfortunately a baseball analogy lends itself much better to the Perm process. So let me explain as follows. Basically, the only thing you need to know about baseball in order to understand the Perm analogy is that there are certain bases. So you have first base, second base, third base, and again, home plate. So first base. First base is what we refer to as the Perm process. It's administered by the U.S. Department of Labor, again through this portal called the iCERT portal. And what it does is it entails an employer recruiting the position that they have available and they have to recruit it to be able to find able, willing, and qualified U.S. workers who could potentially take the job. So the way that we do this is that we work with employers and with the potential employee to develop a job description. Oftentimes that job description is a bit of a fusion between the position that the employer is offering, what the U.S. Department of Labor requires of that position, and we usually look to what's called the ONET, and the ONET is what is the former U.S. Department of Labor online OOH, Occupational Outlook Handbook, and Dictionary of Occupational Titles. Those are the documents that have sort of morphed or evolved into the ONET. And finally, it also includes sort of a fusion of what the individual has in their background, what their responsibilities are. And what we do is we develop this job description, and we run this job description through various sources that the government tells you have to use for advertising and posting. You also have to do a federally mandated prevailing wage through the U.S. Department of Labor. And the idea is to demonstrate to the federal government by filling out a 9089 form and submitting it to the U.S. Department of Labor that there, again, are no able, willing, and qualified U.S. workers who can take the job. Of course, if an able, willing, and qualified U.S. worker submits a resume that does in fact show that they are able to take the job, then unfortunately you won't be able to continue with the Perm labor certification process. Now, once you've gotten to first base, which again is the Perm process, then you have to round first and head for second. Second base is the filling out of what's called the I-140 form. The I-140 form is the application. The I-140 part of the process is not administered by the U.S. Department of Labor. You already have, hopefully, an approval of the Perm labor certification process, and so, or an approved 9089. And then what you're going to do is you're going to submit that to the USCIS. Now, generally speaking, what the USCIS does on an I-140 petition is that they will review that to ensure that the requirements that were set forth on the Perm ETA 9089 form were reasonable, and number two, that the employer has the ability to pay the federally mandated prevailing wage. So generally when we receive what are called RFEs in that second step of the process, that has to do with whether or not the employer is able to pay the federally mandated prevailing wage. Now, once you're able to prove those, and oftentimes what we do is we receive what are called RFEs, requests for evidence from the government, when we submit those I-140 petitions. And that, of course, again, is submitted by the employer on behalf of the employee beneficiary for whom that PERM labor certification is approved. Assuming that you're able to pass second base and head on to third base could be one of two procedures. One is if you have an approved I-140 and your priority date is current. And that's really important because what would happen is in some cases we have some PERM labor certification application cases that are done for Chinese nationals and for Indian nationals whose priority dates may be retrogressed. And as a result of that, we can't really file that third base until those priority dates, which are reported by the U.S. Department of State in the monthly visa bulletin, become current. Once they do become current, then again, we can get to third base, we can slide into third base, and then of course what we do is we can either file for adjustment of status if the individual is in the United States and they're in status, or if they're in the United States and don't have 180 days of unlawful presence, then of course we can use a Section 245K filing for them, or we can send them home and they can go to the U.S. consulate abroad and they can do what's called consular processing. And then, of course, once they've rounded third, they're headed home, and that, of course, is what we call the green card. And that's, of course, what it's all about, and that is the home run part of the process. So I hope that that explains for everyone, all of our viewers, what exactly the step-by-step process is, the three-step process in the PERM labor certification. Thanks very much for joining us today, and we look forward to bringing you additional information about business immigration law in our regular segments of Immigration News and Views. Thanks very much.